everyone. This is Himanshu Sehgal, CEO co-founder PharmaShots. Uh, we are here again, with another episode of CXO Talk. So thank you for taking out time and listening to us periodically. Today we have Dr. Tim O'Connell, who is CEO, Intelligence, which is uh, cutting edge new age company. I would like to welcome him and thank you so much, Dr. Tim, for taking out time and talking to us. So uh, Dr. Tim, can you just give us a quick introduction about you? It would be great for our audience.
Sure. Thanks so much for inviting me on, Himanshu. So, Tim O'Connell, I'm CEO of Emtelligent. We're a medical language AI company. I'm also a practicing radiologist, work clinically part-time, a couple days a week. And previously, before going in medicine, I used to be a network engineer. So in medicine, I've done quite a bit of work in informatics. I have a university appointment and yeah, I stay pretty busy doing all kinds of fun things with the team at Emtelligent.
Awesome. So thank you so much. Now let's start with with a very basic question, a general question, which is, um, can you tell us about the genesis of the company, about how company started and what has been the journey so far?
Yeah, so we got started back in 2016 was when the company was founded. What had happened was I had gone away and done a fellowship in emergency and trauma radiology and also in imaging informatics, and I got introduced to natural language processing software. So I thought, well, this would be great. As a radiologist, particularly working in the emergency department, we often get very little clinical history about our patients, right? A requisition may just say fall or something like that. And so I wanted sort of better clinical histories about my patients, but I didn't want to spend time, it's too high pressure of an environment to sit there sort of reading discharge summaries and prior radiology reports. I just wanted like a bullet point summary. So I put together an application that used some open source medical NLP software, integrated it with our PACS platform so that I could see these patient summaries. But unfortunately, the quality of the NLP just wasn't good enough. It was sort of telling me that patients had diseases they didn't, or that the disease that a family member had belonged to the patient, things like this, right? So it really just wasn't clinically usable for me to be safe. It was only right, 70 or 80% of the time. And around that time, I met one of my co-founders and our CTO, a wonderful guy by the name of Dr. Anup Sarkar. He's a professor here at one of the universities in Vancouver and a lifetime NLP researcher. We hit it off personally, and with a couple other guys we decided to found Emtelligent. And so we've been hard at work for many years now, creating software to structure the unstructured data of healthcare. All those clinic notes that say, Tim came to see me today with a 3-week history of right knee pain. There's a lot of information just in that alone. And so we can take that, structure that data, code that data, and make it usable to a lot of different people in healthcare who have a lot of different use cases.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this history and genesis. So why, the name, I understand that, it's a combination of two words, M and intelligent. So why this combination? Why this name?
Sure. So the name is actually a portmanteau of an acronym and a word. So it was electronic medical intelligence, right? So
Okay.
like we have EMRs for electronic medical record systems.
Yeah.
It was to say, hey, we provide intelligence about what's in the EMR, the EHR.
Oh, no, nice. Very nice to know. Okay, so you mentioned that you have had a vision. You described a vision where unstructured clinical data. You said that unstructured clinical data is not fully harnessed to improve the care and reduce the cost. So, what do you believe would be the biggest misconception or myths, I would say, what healthcare leaders have about AI's role in this vision, basically?
Sure. I think, the problem is that when care providers provide care to patients, they need to document what they did. And the best way for them to do that is in an unstructured form, right? You can't take a 2 hour long psychiatry interview and boil it down into a bunch of checkboxes and drop down menus, right? It's more complex than that. And so the same with an operative note or the same with a radiology report. So we need unstructured text. And but that creates a problem is that a lot of our EHR systems are just sort of like big filing cabinets. They just hold, masses of unstructured text and you need a human to read it. But so that's kind of the problem is that we have all these other use cases like analytics and reimbursement and government use cases like disease surveillance that need to know like what symptoms do people have, what diseases do people have, this sort of thing, and it needs to be extracted from those notes, from those documents. So I think some of the misperception that I find it's the misperception is on either end of the spectrum that some healthcare leaders have. One is that it's an impossible problem and we shouldn't try tackling it, right? I think that's a misperception, right? We've got lots of great use cases where we can use this data and we should be using this data. I think there's another misperception is that that the current state of the art, whatever that is sort of good enough, that it's a solved problem, right? And so, and absolutely that's not the case either, right? Humans being humans, they're going to be ingenious and invent new acronyms, and communication is difficult, and extracting the meaning from those notes is sort of like a problem that is extremely difficult to solve and will almost, sort of require a huge amount of effort to continue to get to, 100% accuracy as close as we can get. So I find there can be misperceptions on either end of the spectrum. One is this will never be solved. The other is what we've got today is good enough, right? And no, it's not. I can tell you that as someone who generates these documents that sort of, a lot of institutions are not making good enough use of that data.
Yeah. So from that, I actually remember about this is something which was published on your website only, that you have done some sort of a survey. And in that survey, 38% respondents said that they had a perfect solution for extracting unstructured data. So this is, I'm directly quoting from that article. So the number 38% is quite low, I would say. So what are those gaps? Why people don't have that, perfect solution? Why 62% people feel that the solution what they have is imperfect, and then how Intelligent is trying to fill up that gap.
Sure. So I think a favorite quote of mine is from the musician Miles Davis. He said, "If you understood everything I said, you'd be me." Right? In other words, meaning that getting out 100% of the meaning out of a conversation or text or whatever it is, whatever type of human communications is extremely difficult to do, right? And so that's kind of the nature of the underlying problem here. This is why only 38% of people say they've got a perfect solution. And I would even say, depending on the use case, that number could be even lower. But that's the problem we're trying to solve, is help people extract all the meaning from these medical documents, these recordings, while still preserving the original intent and not altering the text or making too many inferences about what we think there was subtext or what someone was trying to say. Right? These are medical documents or legal documents, and you have to be fairly strict in the way that you interpret them. But there can be a lot of important sort of meaning and context in there. So that's kind of the problem we're trying to solve. And how we solve it is through our use of clinicians, through our use of cutting edge technology, and through the use of some of our very brilliant developers, computer scientists, people with PhDs in natural language processing and artificial intelligence to try and be able to create a way for machines to be able to structure this text, extract its meaning, and really understand what's being said here.
Awesome. So thank you for that. Another thing, can you talk us about how your platform can handle complex clinical documents and then all that data which is there on that documents is mostly a raw data. So how it extracts information from that raw data and make it, and give us actionable intelligence or actionable insights out of it. So how it works basically.
Sure. So let's take one use case, right? So our software can be used for numerous use cases, structuring the data in billions of documents or something like that. But I think a use case that's really easy for people to understand is a use case where a human is doing some kind of an adjudication task on clinical documents, right? So you might have a nurse or a physician sitting there reading documents. It might be for some kind of medical legal review. It might be for a billing review. It might be for prior authorization. There's lots of clinicians who are out there doing those tasks today. It can be patient transfer, right? The patient's going to get transferred to your hospital. Do you accept this patient or not? Right? Or is your hospital equipped to provide them the level of care they need? So in that case, what often happens, and it's a little bit scary to think this, but what often happens is like a 500-page fax gets sent into the payer or into the hospital, and it is just a bundle of patient documents, right? It's usually their most recent documents, but you kind of get what you get, and you've got to go through it. So those faxes are often sent electronically. So at the end of it, you've got a human today who's sitting there with PDF viewing software, and they're going through the document going like, well, where's the needle in the haystack here? I need to,
Yeah.
and find what I'm looking for. So how we tackle that, first of all, is with our different software platforms. One of our software platforms is called Document Manager. It ingests that 500-page fax. It splits it out into the sub-documents, like page 1 through 3 is a radiology report, page 5, 6, and 7 are a discharge summary. It categorizes those documents, like, says what they are, does optical character recognition on them. We patented some features there that can be used to deal with some of the oddities we see in medical language, in medical documents rather. And so it really extracts the text and labels the documents so that people, first of all, know what they're even looking at. The next product is our medical language engine, and it goes from Document Manager into medical language engine. Medical language engine structures the text. It codes all the text. It knows if diseases are present or absent and who they belong to, things like this. And that's really the sort of understanding of the document. And then we have another platform called Clinical Workflow, which is for AI-assisted human review. So all the data from those two steps gets put into this third platform. The third platform is a user interface, and a human can sit there and go, okay, now I've taken this like fax of completely unlabeled information, and now it's completely labeled, it's completely structured. We've got all the documents sorted by date, and I can look at the PDF, I can look at the extracted text, I can ask questions, I can just be like, has this patient ever had cancer, right? Like you can just sort of like go through it. We can do criteria matching to go, okay, the patient was billed as a sepsis patient. Here's 4 of the criteria for SIRS. Do they meet these criteria? This sort of thing. So it's really we use our platforms in that use case to help people get a 360 degree of the patient chart and find that needle in the haystack faster and more efficiently and with more context than they've ever had before.
Okay. So you talk about utilization of AI, which utilizes and then I was reading on your website as well. You utilize large language models, LLMs, and an LLM has a great potential, very huge potential in the future. But presently, there have been cases where it has been observed that LLM models have hallucinated basically, and misunderstood the information. So how does your platform mitigate that issue and ensures the accuracy and and builds the trust basically?
Sure. So we do this in a few ways. Number one, a lot of what we do is actually not built using large language models. It's built using, bespoke models, and these models do not have a tendency to hallucinate. Every model is characterized by its precision and recall. We do this continually. We're continually improving all of our models. And so that's one way. We deal with hallucinations by not using LLMs some of the time. In other cases where we have to do hybrid pipelines for people, we've actually patented a method to vastly reduce the LLMs from hallucinating. I can't go into the details of it, but that's another method which we use to help provide additional context so that the model will basically not hallucinate when people are asking it questions. And thirdly, we really try to do end-to-end sort of pipeline engineering for a lot of these tasks, especially if LLMs are involved, so that we can characterize it and we can understand what safeguards need to be in place, right? It's what I worry about is people with no clinical experience trying to build medical products or medical pipelines using LLMs and not understanding where they have a tendency to hallucinate and how that can negatively affect the workflow. Right. So I think and making sure that when we're working with customers that we do provide this guidance on a very consultative basis with them to go, hey, maybe you need to think about having a human review step in here, this sort of thing, to be able to catch when these occurrences can happen.
So, I remember you talking about, you've taken an example of facts and notes and all that. So a question comes to mind that at this moment also, because though we are living in a digital age, not stage, we're living in a digital age, and still there are a lot of EHR data is still being in the faxes, in the notes. Doctors at HCP still write the notes on the piece of paper. So how does what are some of the most impactful use cases you have seen with Emtelligence platform in the clinical practices or research? Can you
Sure.
tell us about that?
Yeah. So I think, I think the handwriting is becoming less and less common in healthcare. I don't spend too much of my day worrying about handwriting. Since really the High Tech Act in 2009, there's really been wide scale adoption of electronic health record systems. And every year that amount of handwriting goes down and down and down, particularly as we're seeing technologies like AI scribes come in. Doesn't mean, every year we're also seeing the volume of unstructured data go up and up and up. But that's why we exist, is to deal with that unstructured data volume. I think one of the most impactful use cases we're working on right now is very large scale data extraction. And so we're working with a number of customers who have billions of medical documents, that's with a B, and they need various things extracted from these documents, right? It could be clinical parameters like measurements about patients, things like ejection fraction or something like that, right? And they because things like this very commonly get mentioned in clinical encounter notes. And a doctor might recount, oh, the patient's most recent test value was X or something like that. And they need these extracted at scale. And one of the limits in doing that when you have billions of documents is you can't just take a large language model and throw it at it. Your cost will be through the roof, and the amount of time it will take will be through the roof. You won't have enough tokens from the foundational model vendor, this sort of thing. So that's where the models you've been building for years come in and can process massive volumes of data very, very rapidly to be able to help our customers with extraction needs. And this data is being used in research. It's being used in the biomedical industry for use cases that people have where they're looking for scale problems. So that's kind of one area that's keeping us pretty busy right now.
Okay. Now again, referring back to your website and talking about, I read something about social determinants of health, SDOH, as as critical to a whole person. And again, I'm directly speaking from what is written there. So there is a mention of social determinants of health as critical to whole person care. So how does your technology extract and contextualize SDOH data, and how is the data used in the downstream?
Sure. So, the social determinants of health are things like people's financial situation, family and living situation, environmental situation, work situation, things like that. And they obviously have impacts on patient care. There's been recent changes in reimbursement from people like Medicare to make sure that providers are paying attention to social determinants of health. And so it's wonderful. It's finally being recognized as, hey, we need to, well, as clinicians, we may not be able to cure or fix, someone's work situation. We do need to account for it in caring for the patient. So that's sort of the why it's important. The issue with social determinants of health is it's rarely documented in a very structured way in patients' charts by physicians. It's not something we're taught at medical school. It's really not sort of necessarily something that's been drilled into everyone's head. Hey, this is your job to write down what the patient's monthly income is, right? Like that generally doesn't appear in charts. What does appear in charts is things like, the patient couldn't get their medicine as they had to buy food for their children or something
Mhm.
like that. So you often get very oblique references to things relating to social determinants of health. So we use a combination of our models and large language models to be able to categorize, code, and extract things about social determinants of health and present them to the end user in a way that gives them the context they need to understand a patient's social needs. It's a very active area of development for us right now.
I mean, it sounds really interesting. You know, combining the social determinants with the health tech, pretty nice. Okay, so while we are talking about social determinants and the health, there is another question which comes to mind is about the data privacy,
Mm.
and a lot of skepticism in context to data privacy while doing the AI adoption. So there are two parts to this question basically. Uh, how does M intelligence compliant, and then what steps you guys are taking to be data compliant and have the privacy. And the second question is, uh, how would you, what would you advise the healthcare leaders, who are trying to do a build buy-in for AI across their organization? So two parts question,
Yeah.
how you want to take it.
Sure. So I'll answer the first question first. And so we recently achieved a high trust certification for a couple of our product platforms, and that is it's both a wonderful process and a very difficult process on the other hand. But it's necessarily difficult in that it involves really extensive audits of your entire organization, to make sure that internal controls on data security and privacy are in place, that you're handling data appropriately, that you're onboarding employees appropriately, dealing with contractors appropriately. It's a very extensive review process. It took us a couple of years to get in place, and so that high trust certification, and it's an ongoing thing. It's not just you do it once and forget it, but it's a way for our customers and us to have a common language to go, hey, you can see what high trust certification involves. We're high trust certified. You can, if you're happy with those things, you can rest assured that, we're going to be dealing with your data appropriately. So that's one way that we deal with it. We've always wanted to deal extremely carefully with patient data, but having this complex audit process in place is a very important thing as well. I think the other thing that, to answer your second question, which is sort of like, what advice do I have for healthcare leaders who are trying to build AI into their organization? I think they need to read the fine print really, really carefully. Um, Working with some of the foundational model vendors, it is, while they will sign a HIPAA business associate agreement with you, in many cases, they push all the risk back onto you, the customer, and they sort of refuse to take any risk. In other cases, they say, well, we're HIPAA BA compliant, we're going to be HIPAA compliant, but we're still reserve the right to use your data. Right. And that may be a no-go depending on what the use case is. So I think that healthcare leaders need to work very closely with their vendors and go, we really need to understand how our patient data is getting used, right? If someone says, Mrs. Smith had a heart attack last month, and that goes to a foundational model vendor, are they then going to incorporate Mrs. Smith into their model, right? I think we need to be really careful about things like that.
Okay, so another question, from this only, what would you advise healthcare leader to build in-house or buy in maybe the data to generate insight? What would be your personal advice again?
Sure. So we've encountered, the build versus buy thing for many years now.
Hmm.
I think many people, and we've seen this many times before, where we'll talk to a customer and they'll say, "Oh, we've got a guy who did like a master's degree in NLP. Like, we don't need your software. We're going to build it ourselves." And then, they'll come back to us a year later and be like, "This is a terrible problem. This is just a rabbit hole. It's sucked up time and resources, and we're way behind on this project. Can we talk to you about your software?" So I think if you're looking for solutions to do large scale structuring of clinical data, it's too difficult a problem. You should be looking to work with a vendor. You should not try to build that yourself. That being said, I think there are lots of very niche use cases for hospitals, health systems, payers that are only unique to their business. And those are the solutions that they should be working on to build solutions to. And that could be working with AI vendors like us. It could be working with foundational model vendors. It could be whatever they need to pull in the tools to solve their use case. I think the use case engineering is best done by the customers, while the technology and platform engineering is best done by the vendors.
Awesome. So this is going to be my second last question. I'm swearing by it for sure. So again, this is two-parted question. One is, how do you see next 3 to 5 years shaping up in terms of AI, LLM, in the healthcare industry? So that's first part. And second part is that keeping that vision in mind, keeping that futuristic vision in mind, how is Emtelligent, adopting to it? And maybe like you're developing some sort of pipeline products, or improving your existing technology. It could be anything basically. So would you like to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really hard to make technology predictions over the next 5 years. Right? If you asked someone in 2021, are we going to see, what's the next big technology thing? They may not have said, "Oh, general purpose transformer models that, create large language models," right? So you never sort of know where these disruptive events are going to come from. But what we are seeing as a broader market trend right now is people have been kicking the tires on AI products and solutions for a couple of years. In many cases, getting back to your last question, they've been trying to build them in-house.
Mhm.
And this is not just at health systems or payers, it's at vendors who are also trying to use these foundational models. And what we're seeing in a lot of cases is people are coming to us and saying, "We've tried to do this for 2 years now. We've not been successful. Can you help us?"
Mhm.
And so what we're seeing is there's tremendous pressure coming in from boards at companies and executive levels, C-levels at companies, to their company going, "We need AI solutions. We need to reduce our costs. We need to improve efficiency. We need to improve quality and safety. We know AI is the right solution for this, or can be used for this. We need to make this happen now." So what we're doing is we're seeing the market switch from sort of experimentation to adoption.
Mhm.
And what we're doing at Emtelligent is we are scaling up our company, our business, to be able to assist people with adoption, with implementation, to rapidly get through proof of concepts, rapidly get through pilot projects, making sure that things work and are safe with their data and well characterized, so that these companies can implement solutions today.
Awesome. So yeah, so that's my second last question, and now comes my last question. We've spoken about the shop talk a lot. Now let's talk a little bit about Dr. Tim. How do you spend your time? Obviously, you've told us about you being a practicing and then practicing radiologist, and spending time there. But except work, what else do you do?
Well, I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world. I've got a wonderful family and two children, and they keep me incredibly busy. So, yeah, I spend a lot of my time, and they're at the right age to spend time with them, and they still enjoy spending time with me. So at least I think they do. So, that's where I really try to spend all my time.
I
Um,
can relate to it for sure.
Okay, good. Yeah, yeah. In that way that the people can, for sure. It's the most wonderful thing, and the biggest privilege, one of the biggest privileges I've ever had, is to be a parent. And you just try to do your best and hope you don't mess up.
Definitely. So on that note, on that happy note, thank you so much for your time. It was a very insightful conversation. There were a lot of things which I did not know, though I have spent my a lot of initial part of my career in radiology actually. Yeah. So I've worked with Dr. Arjun Kalyanpur as the project coordinator. Uh, yeah, I mean, but again, this conversation was really insightful. So thank you so much for your time. It was lovely talking to you, and hope to catch up with you soon. On another day, another topic, basically.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, Himanshu.
Thank you. Have a
Okay.
nice day. Bye bye.
You too. Bye bye.